Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Game Over Outdoors. I'm Joel Miller. Today I'm coming to you from the creek. I just pulled down in here with the boat. Probably saw me crouched over here. I was getting the water temperature. And this is something that if you were a catch and release muskie angler, you really need to be doing this time of year. It's June 21st right now, and we are approaching July. And this is the time of year, especially in the creeks, when these water temps are going to spike. Now our lakes, they're pretty much already toast. I'd say just about any lake you go to right now, the water temperature is 80 degrees or better. And I've mentioned 80 degrees a couple times already, and that's because that's an important number when it comes to these muskies. There's been plenty of anecdotal evidence in the past that once the water temps hit 80 degrees and up, you're going to start seeing fish float up dead. Okay, and that's been a very hot topic, no pun intended. Very hot topic for many years now, and finally we've had a study done on this 80 degree plus water temp scenario. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, making judgment calls when it comes to this 80 degree water temperature and the results and some of what was going on with this study. Coming to you today from the Palestine Warm Water Fish Hatchery here in West Virginia. I have Taylor Booth with me today, and he's going to explain to you what's going on here with this warm water study for muskies.
How you doing, folks? Taylor Booth here. I'm a master's student at West Virginia University under Dr. Kyle Hartman, and one of the grad students working on the muskie mortality study, specifically the pond component that you can see behind us. The main goal of the project is to try and put some numbers to that age-old question of why we stop fishing at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I know a lot of experienced anglers out there, they have anecdotal evidence and personal observations of seeing dead muskie at these hot temps. So we're going to use this project as an opportunity to finally get some solid evidence on that phenomenon.
So what made you pick, because I'm sure you had a list of topics that you could have picked for this study. So what made you pick muskies?
Well, I mean, we had a lot of exotic and sought-after species in our lab. I could have worked on brook trout, largemouth bass, catfish, or muskie. And I'm from Vermont. I grew up fishing pike. Muskie was always just this kind of unattainable goal because we don't really have a lot in Vermont, and it's just this fabled fish. So I get to fish for my project, so that was the big driving force. It's one of the most exciting fishes to catch and study, and then also I get to angle as a master's student.
Nice. So coming into this project, knowing what you know with the anecdotal evidence, what was your hypothesis coming into it? Do you think it's more temperature related? Do you think it's more of what happens during the fight, or what's your insight on that?
I mean, just me fishing since I was a kid. I've had fish pass away on me, and usually you chop it to the fact that it was too deep hooked in the throat or in the gills. When it came to pike and muskie, I was always thinking that the longer fight times, which was really stressing out the fish, and they didn't have that ability to recover, get back to thermal refuge or whatever. But since starting the pond project, I really can't put my finger on what specifically it is. It's definitely a combination of these hot temps stressing them out, the longer fights and hooking locations, and hopefully at the end of this project we can give some more concrete evidence as to what's really causing this. these deaths.
All right, so this is year 2 in West Virginia, but this project has kind of expanded out to other states. So this is the final year in our state. Are the other states going to continue another year as well that have just joined this year?
So it's 2 of the other grad students, their projects in the wild. I collected all my fish from the wild and stocked them into these ponds. I believe that the state agencies that they're working with are going to continue tracking these fish. And a big thing that we've had talking about in our meetings is getting anglers with pit tag scanners, so you can do mark recapture analysis. So you can see if you caught fish 449 and 2 weeks later I go catch fish 449, well, clearly catch and release is working there. And just giving anglers the tools necessary to kind of do some citizen science, I think, is a big step in the right direction. As for continuation of the projects, I know Maryland has an ongoing catch and release project, Virginia on the St. James River, and now here on Stonewall Jackson in West Virginia.
Do you notice any differences so far from what you've gathered between the fish in the wild and the fish in the ponds as far as their mortality rates go?
Mortality rate, I mean, just from what we have data-wise between Stonewall Jackson and West Virginia and our ponds, we're pretty much on the same route with each other. I believe Peter's looking at 20% roughly right now. That's not official, and I'm fairly similar around 25% when we're over that 80-degree Fahrenheit threshold.
Okay, so we're looking at maybe 2 fish left in these ponds to wrap this up here at the hatchery.
Minimum of 2, maximum of 6. We'd like to have half of them remain caught or uncaught and half of them caught. That way we have some controls to compare against. And right now we're at a total of 19 fish caught out of 41 in the ponds.
All right, so this could potentially be the last fishing trip to these ponds as far as I'm concerned, and maybe even Taylor if we have a pretty good evening tonight. So we're going to get after them here, get the boat in the ponds, and see if we can put a couple in the bag. So stick with us and see what happens. Pond component, what I was helping out with, I would drive to the ponds. I brought the boat with us so we could have a better chance of hitting different angles to catch these fish and figure eighting the fish. Really hard to do that from the bank, especially in what is essentially a farm pond with a lot of growth around the edges. You can't always get down to the water, and we were going to be collecting data from each catch. So going into some of the data that was collected for these catches. So first thing is hook location. So you catch a fish, it's hooked in a certain spot in the mouth. They have a sheet that they filled out for every single catch, and it had a nice mouth diagram on it, and There was a mark placed anywhere that there was a hook in the fish's mouth. Another thing that was taken into consideration is fight time, and that was measured through video. So I think that's one of the reasons why I was invited to come help, because I'm always filming. So as soon as you set the hook into that fish on the video, the clock starts. And then as soon as that fish hits the bag, the clock stops. That's your fight time. Another thing taken into consideration was net time. So as soon as that fish hits the bag to the time you take it out for the hero shot, that's your net time. Now, one thing that was held constant throughout the wild and the pond component altogether was how long you held the fish out of the water. And that number was settled on trying to find a midway point between the experienced anglers and the inexperienced anglers. Someone who hasn't handled as many muskies, that might fumble around a little bit more, or might not be as prepared. Also taking into account for bass anglers or any other anglers that might catch a muskie as a bycatch. They're definitely not used to handling muskies. They're more than likely not prepared to net the fish and have the ample tools necessary for safe catch and release. That number was settled at 30 seconds. Now, if you're an experienced muskie angler, you might look back at if you film like I do. Once I heard this, I went back and looked at my own footage and found that my average was somewhere between 9 and 12 seconds. Okay, so holding a fish out of water for me is like, why am I doing this? But someone who may not be as experienced might hold a fish out much longer, getting several pictures if they've never caught one before, or if it flops in the bottom of the boat, which that can happen to anybody. I still have a fish flop away from me every now and then myself. Or if you get one hooked really badly and you have to perform surgery, cutting hooks and whatnot, those fish aren't always cooperative. So they'll roll up in that bag and get hooks everywhere, and you have a hard time getting into them. So it's just stuff that happens. So that 30-second time frame, holding the fish out of the water, was settled on, and I think it's a pretty fair number between the experienced and inexperienced anglers. Okay, and then another thing that was taken into consideration was how the fish took off on the release. So we all look at a fish when we release and say, oh yeah, that thing shot off, it's good, or man, he's taking off kind of slow, or he's staying at the top, he's not going down. So that type of stuff was taken into consideration to see if there was any correlation between how the fish took off and its survival. It was definitely a different type of fishing. I know maybe up north where there's more pencil reeds and whatnot, you might be used to fishing those reeds and stuff, but I'm not used to fishing that. Cattails. And one thing that I was, really seeing, I'm going into some of the things that I observed just from fishing this pond, is despite the water temps, a lot of these fish were stacked up in the back end of the pond where it's the shallowest. I mean, I'm talking 1.5 feet of water or less. And I even heard them back in what was probably less than a foot of water, busting frogs and stuff, what sounded like at least, back into those cattails. So you saw me, pitching jigs and stuff back to those cattails. And I was hoping that, I wanted to catch the fish, but hooking fish back in there might complicate issues as far as getting it to the bag. But we were trying like crazy, because here's something else that we found, is that once the water temperatures get so high above 80, it's like they hit a stage of dormancy. Like, the energy gained from the food that they're getting is not worth the energy spent from getting it. So a lot of times I wasn't getting there until mid to late June, and think of it in terms of a farm pond. It's not really spring fed. There is an aerator. It's sitting out in the open, hardly any shade available whatsoever. 5, 6 feet deep at its deepest point. That pond by mid-June is already looking at mid-80s to high 80s. And some days that I was there, it was 92-degree water temperature, and we hardly even saw fish on those days. It was pretty demoralizing. You think fishing in a barrel would be easy, but it's not. 22 fish in an acre pond, you think you're gonna go wear that out, and you're wrong if you think so. And part of that had to do with the water temperature, I'm sure, and how some of them might have got caught before the time frame that I and my friends were able to go there in the boat. So anyway, I'm sure you saw some of those fish following. I was trying a wide range of things. I tried 18-inch baits down to 6-inch Senkos even. And both the fish I ended up catching were on my bucktails, and then my friend Daryl, he ended up catching one on a Savage line through roach.
There went one. I pulled that thing over him 3 times. He shot toward the cattails.
Oh, got it!
Coming in hot, coming in hot. Ready? Yeah!
It happened. It's real. They do exist. I told you.
They do exist.
So I want to try and get that hook out before he manages to jump out.
He won't. Let's do a little switcheroo there.
Let me see before anything.
I can.
Back doors.
You want to get the hook out before that?
Pretty much down the hook, yeah. Grab that. Now I just need to, around his dorsal fin is the tag.
Okay. Get it?
Yep.
Oh, fish, don't go crazy. I'm trying to get this out
That's okay.
before.
You can just leave that in there, and we can just hold them out for 30 seconds. Do you have your phone on you?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I've had too many close calls with that in the bag trying to reach for one and they flop and you get it in you. No, you get yourself, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But this is perfect. Like, if every angler treated the fish like this, we probably see really low mortality.
Why keep going to the cam? I'm used to going to the camera.
Give me that thing. I can wear your head cam too to get you a good picture.
Okay.
But yeah, I just need the phone for the timer.
It is rolling, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, you're good.
So we don't need to measure, or
Nope.
do we?
I got the pit tag info,
Okay.
and I have all that other info from there. So you just do your typical hold out fish out of the water, and I'll start the timer when it comes out of the water.
Boy, holding them out of the water 30 seconds will be tough.
Yeah, either.
Crazy. Man, that thing's red as can
I
be.
saw the back. Yeah.
Man, that makes me feel like crap.
No, I think that was more like abrasion on your net though, and the line, because he was wrapped up in it. But if you can get him by the gill plate, go for it. Otherwise, I just go with the dorsal tail grab.
All right, we'll go left hand grip.
Got him? Yeah. Cool. Start. Good. And now I just hold him out of water for 30 seconds. We'll get some good pics. See, he is very red. I'm just gonna get the other side too. See if he's got anything.
Yeah, his back's very red.
I think that's just from line
He's tensing
twist.
up. He's gonna flop.
Throw him back in the net. And he's still out. That's fine. 21 seconds. So get ready to put him back in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. And then tail grab here. And then when he's ready to go, just let him go.
God, look how red that's stress there. That's.
You think so?
Oh yeah, that's definitely stress.
Yeah, if he wants to, just yeah, perfect. So that's. Did he burst away or is he still?
Nah, he's just laying there.
So
had an initial hard kick, but then he just sank down.
So I gave him a 2 there, so he swam down and maintained equilibrium.
Yep, he's still laying right there though.
He didn't burst away. Cool.
Yeah, use it.
Oh, got it.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Not yet. That's all. Bit. Here we go. Where am I at?
17 seconds.
17?
19.
Okay.
21. 24, 25, 27, 29, 30.
I can smell it. Definitely not a good takeoff. Probably a 1. You think?
Yeah,
One of the criteria is maintain an equilibrium, which it is.
Yeah.
But how it was, you know, really flopping hard on me there when I was holding it. That does.
Part of the study.
Oh,
man.
absolutely. I'm just making notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But got it. Nah, this one.
Ready?
Mm-hmm. Feel
How we doing on
intense, huh?
How we doing on time?
12 seconds.
Like right now, I'd be putting the fish back in the water.
Nah, probably sooner than that. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Getting by tail.
Got him.
Yep, and I'm pulling him straight out.
Dummy man.
Just whenever he gives you any bit of a kick,
He's
just let
giving
him.
me some kick.
All right, let him go.
I don't like it.
So as far as these results go, what was found was that you have basically a 1 in 3 chance of killing a fish when you're in these 80-degree plus temperatures. Now there's several different scenarios run, and Taylor found that the most influential scenario with the temperature was a 5-day average temperature, with the catch being in the center of that average temperature time frame. So, you know, the 2.5 days before, 2.5 days after, the catch is right in the middle of that average. So what was found with that was that every degree in that average, over 80 degrees, increases the chances of mortality by 10%. Okay, the second most influential was net time, which actually kind of surprised me. But if you think about it, you know, if you look at it just at the surface, okay, the fish is in the water and it's recovering in that bag. Yeah, it might have thrashed around for 15-20 seconds, but now it's just sitting there, so it should be recovering. But think about it in terms of the temperature scenario. That fish you probably pulled up from cooler temperatures. It's down wherever it is to be out of this hot temperature and not be as stressed. Okay, but now you have that fish up in the bag post-fight, so it is stressed now, and it's sitting in that top foot of the water column where it's the hottest. So these fish are actually just struggling to survive in some of these temperatures. I mean, there were fish in the study that just bellied up and died. They weren't ever caught. I remember Taylor actually providing some anecdotal evidence. He was sitting there by the pond one day taking a break, and a fish just swam up to the bank and just bellied up said it's my time. They went back, they tagged, or they got the tag information from the fish, went back and looked, and the fish had never been caught in the study. So these fish are stressed out in these temperatures as it is, let alone if you catch them. So, you know, you're pulling that fish out that's already struggling into the hottest part of the water column, whether it's in the water or not. It is in the hot part, which is actually stressing them out. That's going to lead to even more stress. So that was the second most influential factor. And it's basically every second in the net is going to add to the odds of mortality. And you can actually, I'm going to show you the graphs here. There's two graphs for that temperature range, the average temperature range, and the net times. And you can also reference the studies at the end if you want. Go down to the description. The links are there. This one is the pond component, which I will have them labeled which one's which. And I believe those charts are on pages 48 and 49 of the study. They're very useful charts. You can see exactly, you know, how much error is involved with these calculations, and you can see just how impactful this is. Also, with all the fish that were caught, there were some fish caught in the high 70s range as well, but you can see the majority of the fish that were caught and died were above that 80-degree spectrum. So those were the two most influential things. Some other things that were being taken into consideration: the hook placement in the mouth really had no impact on the mortality of the fish. Granted, none of them were hooked in poor spots that, you know, would suggest that the fish would die. I think those esophagus and gill hook scenarios, even though they weren't experienced in this project, they're likely to kill the fish regardless of the water temperatures. Also, the fight time really wasn't indicative of whether the fish was going to die or survive. There weren't really truly any long fight times in this project. If you were to get beyond a certain point, I believe you're wearing that fish to full exhaustion. That fish is likely to die anyway, regardless of temperatures. I know that the temperature being colder would help the recovery process, but when you're combining those really long fight times and really hot water, it can't really be a good recipe there. Also, the ramp score that was given to the fish when they took off, one thing that was noted was if the fish experienced all of its release reflexes, then it was indicative that the fish was going to survive. So all those reflexes, meaning that it stayed upright, maintained its equilibrium, it had a powerful burst off and downward into the water. Okay, so those fish, it showed that reflex showed very, very high chances of survival. Now, the lower scores, like the 1 and the 2s on the charts, which is what most of our fish experienced, that was there really wasn't a positive correlation to their survival or death based off of the poorer reflexes on takeoff. So anyway, the two main things: the 5-day average temperature and the net time. You can look more into those if you wish. Those links will be provided in the description. Now, I did mention earlier comparing the pond component to the wild components, and this is where there was a little discrepancy between the Stonewall Jackson component and the pond component. The mortality was very much lower in the Stonewall component, and it's believed because there is a cold water refuge. And now, just because there's this cold water refuge down next to the thermocline with a little pocket of oxygen that they call the recovery zone, doesn't mean you should go out there and beat it to death, because there's still no guarantee those fish would make it down to that, and not all parts of the lake may have that recovery zone. It just depends on the lake and how it stratifies. Not all lakes stratify the same. In comparison to the to the James River part of the component, those fish lined up more closely to the pond component, and that's where there's an absence of the cool water refuge. Just some other things that I want to throw in there. Before this project, all we had was anecdotal evidence, and that is just, you know, somebody out there seeing something happening. Okay, that's not considered hard data. Okay, it is data, but it's anecdotal evidence, and this is what anecdotal evidence will bring you in a world full of opinions. Okay, somebody sees a fish floating, says, okay, well, these fish die in 80-degree temps. Okay, so someone goes and tells somebody else that. Say it's a guide, and there's plenty of guides out there that are doing this, telling people, okay, these fish died 80 degrees, we stopped fishing at this time, and so on. Well, I've talked to several people when this project was underway about what was going on with it, and I couldn't tell you how many times some of these people were saying, well, these people are telling you this just so that you'll stay off of their waters during the summertime and not give them any competition. So, I mean, I'm fully against any statement like that, because, you know, if you think about it, people who truly care about the sport and care about the fish should not be steering you in the wrong direction. And if they do, they got something else coming. But for the most matter, everybody should be happy that this study took place, because this is giving us the hard data that is needed. I know a lot of us, myself personally, were hoping for a closed season, say in like, you know, July through the end of August. That way nobody's going to be fishing for them, at least targeting them for that matter. But we didn't get that. There wasn't enough hard data, but there was enough hard data there to say, hey, this is a thing and we need to take this into consideration when we're planning our trips. This gives us ammunition whenever we're telling people, you know, spreading the word about the hot water. There's no more, okay, well, so-and-so is just telling you this to keep you off the waters. There's no more of that. There is hard evidence right there suggesting that these fish are dying in these temperatures. So definitely use this to your advantage. Spread the word to all the people that you know that are wanting to get into the sport, or who are already in the sport that you know they probably fish too far into the summertime. Use this study to everybody's advantage, because everybody's going to benefit from fish not dying just because of, you know, complacency or having your own opinion on things and going out there and killing fish. 1 in 3 fish are likely to die in these temperatures. So that means if you have a 3-fish day, one of those is likely to die. If you have a 6-fish day, it does happen. I had a 4-fish day yesterday, so I mean, I wasn't fishing the hot water temperatures, but just thinking about the likelihood, I mean, you know, those days come around that you catch a lot of fish, and we live for those days as muskie anglers. But if you have one of those days in the hot water time period, you know, 6-fish day, 2 of those fish are likely to die. More could, less could. So look at it that way. You know, you caught 3 fish and you come back, one of those fish is likely to not be there the next time you come out. And we want to release this fish so we can go back and catch it again. So it's important to keep this stuff in mind. No matter how badly you want to go out and fish, it's best to put it down whenever those temperatures are present. Now, another thing we want to add, I'm in the creek. This can definitely extend your fishing time in a year to maybe even a month, but you need to check the temperatures regularly. So having one of these thermometers is very important. This one was like 10 bucks. It's a meat thermometer I got from Walmart. I went on a shocking trip with the DNR this year, and this is the exact one they used to get the temperature of the water that day. So it's accurate. If it's accurate enough that the DNR is going to use it, it's accurate enough for you to use. And I know if you're going in the creeks, you probably don't have a boat set up with a fish finder or anything to give you temperature. So this is very handy to have. You can throw it in your toolbox with all your release tools. Always have it on you, and it gives you pretty accurate readings. I just took the temperature a little bit ago, and it was 69 degrees. If 10 bucks is too much for you, you can go to the aquarium section at Walmart and get like one of those little stick-on thermometers for your aquarium and carry it around with you. I will advise you, I used to do this, take it inside with you every time you get home from a trip, because it will get so hot in that thing that it blows it up. So you don't want that. That's why I went to one of these, because it's a little bit more durable than those other thermometers. So anyway, another thing to keep in mind, take into consideration with these creeks, is flow. Okay, you might have mid-70s, high 70s temperatures. It's peaking at those temperatures, but if there's zero flow, and a lot of times in these hot water periods, there's not a lot of flow. We've recently come off of some serious rain. Granted, we're not even close right now to the hot water period in the creek. I mean, we probably still have another week left before you start seeing temperatures hit 80 and go above. We do have a hot spell coming, but if the water's low enough that it looks like it's starting to stagnate, and you got that film on the water, and you're in a shoal like I'm in right now, and there's not much flow, still probably not a good chance in those high 70s temperatures, just because, you know, flow is one of the things that's going to generate that oxygen. And if you're seeing the film on the water, that nasty film, you're not getting that oxygen. So keep that in mind when you're going out to the creeks. Yes, this can extend your time, but don't take it for granted. Still go, still check the temperatures. Keep the keep your weather history and forecast in the future, or in your mind, so you can use that to make your decision as to whether you're going to fish or not. And check the flows. If there's not much flow, don't do it. Hopefully you enjoyed this segment. Hopefully you enjoyed the footage. of me trying to catch fish in a barrel. It was actually a lot harder than I thought. But hopefully you enjoyed that footage, and you can use these results to better inform others, and also use it, you know, when deciding your own fishing schedule. Be sure to go down, check out the studies. Like I said before, though, these are grad students' projects for their degrees. You might have to look up some terminology. Big deal. Doesn't take very long to do that, and it will let you look at these documents and better understand them in the long run. Hopefully, this is just one piece of the puzzle. Hopefully, we can get some stuff in the future that, you know, if we find out more data about these fish, we might end up with a closed season. You never know. So get the word out with the information that we now have provided to us. Hard data is important. So get that information out there. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on Game Over Outdoors.